Hello, School Transportation Nation. It's Tony Corpin. We're here on the podcast. It's brought to you by TransFinder, the leader in school bus routing. I have with me Taylor Ekbatani and Ryan Gray. We are fresh off the ACT Expo Advanced Clean Transportation. It was down in Anaheim, California. We were all busy last week, meeting with suppliers, listening to sessions. It was a lot to take in. The show was a monster. It was over 500 exhibitors, about 12,000 attendees. Yes, you heard me right, 12,000 attendees. Just like a little smattering of school transportation. But, you know, for us, we saw numerous suppliers and partners that we work with there, and they provided a lot of great insights and information. And Ryan and Taylor are going to be breaking it down for us a little bit. Before we get there, we got a quick message. Are you part of a top transportation team? If you said yes, I invite you to apply today for this special awards program at toptransportationteams.com. Our friends at TransFinder launched the Top Transportation Teams program about 3 years ago in collaboration with ACT Expo. It provides the opportunity to get your team the recognition they deserve. Why enroll? It's a great team building exercise, and you will learn from other school districts and private school bus contractors about how to become even better team than you are today. 6 winners and an honorable mention from across North America will be announced at STN Expo West this summer. You'll receive complimentary full conference registration, accommodations, and a ton of media attention. You don't have to be a TransFinder client either, though I'm sure you'd love to be. School districts and contractors are encouraged to enroll. Visit toptransportationteams.com to learn more. Enrollment ends May 16th, so get started today. That's toptransportationteams.com. All right, we're back. Who wants to take it? Ryan, you want to start off? Talk a little bit?
Sure. I think, as you said, there was so much to take in, so much to absorb over the 3 days that we were there. ACT Expo is actually 4 days long. Really, the last day was a half day. So we really concentrated on the first 3 days. And I think that what really stood out to me was there was a palpable shift in the conversation. And with that, the caveat is that the last several years, there had been talk about being more agnostic and more embracing of all fuels. And that certainly continued for a while there. Zero emissions, electric, whether it be, or fuel cell, hydrogen fuel cell, was really the topic du jour. And then it really became, well, it's going to take a village. It's going to take all these different fuels to meet these zero and low zero emissions goals that states have, that the federal government has. We knew that going into the President Trump's second term here, or second go around, if you will, in the Oval Office, things were going to be different. There's still a lot of regulation uncertainty, funding uncertainty. But what really stood out to me was there was all of a sudden a much more discussion about AI. And certainly autonomous. And for our audience, autonomous is kind of still a dirty word. There are automated processes, though, that go into student transportation or that could be furthered in school transportation. But really the talk about AI and the development of that. I noted that one of the speakers mentioned that, in fact, it was Matthias Karlbaum, the president and CEO of International Trucks. He said during a main stage session, for a while there, for the past, several years or so, when talking about AI, it just seemed to be like, when's it ever going to get here? People were talking about it, but there wasn't enough development. We didn't see things really coming to fruition. But in the last year and a half, he said it's just skyrocketed. And I learned a new term this past week. It was the software defined vehicle, or SDI. I heard that in several sessions, and I was like, what is that? And really, it's the using AI as a big engine to it It's taking this over-the-air concept that we've been talking about for many years, and really that was about, pushing engine software updates. That you're talking about software updates across the vehicle. And certainly we're going to see these in big trucks first, but it's signs of things to come for school buses where any type of software update at the push of a button, it's going to go automatically to the vehicle, and that's really going to revolutionize things. So those were the things that really stood out to me, and we can get into the weeds, and there was a lot to discuss, but that shift to really talking about AI's role in emissions reductions and in this zero emissions path.
Yeah, I would agree, Ryan. I think there was a lot of conversation about software and integrating that into, the school bus or the trucking kind of industry. And it is interesting, right? I've been going for the past couple of years now, and it's all been kind of fuel focused. And so this year, that shift toward other types or other ways the vehicle is traveling, right? AI or autonomy. And I know in one of the sessions they joked like, oh, there's never going to be a driverless school bus, right? And I don't think we're going to see that for a while, if ever. But Uber now, through Waymo, have you guys got on a Uber without a driver?
No, I've not done the Uber. I've seen the Waymos driving around, and for a while it was even, and I saw them more up in Santa Monica. Like you get up by the 3rd Street Promenade area, that famous kind of shopping area by the beach, and I would see these Jaguar I-Paces, going around, and they would be always nobody in it because they were just going around. I think initially a lot of it was mapping the streets. Well, I've started to see them down here in the South Bay, Torrance Redondo area, and I actually saw one a couple weeks ago with the first passenger in it. It was sitting in the there was actually twice. I saw one in the back seat and another time it was somebody in the front seat. So they are on the streets, and maybe not in your neck of the woods out there, wherever you are in the nation out there, but certainly we're starting to see those more in the bigger cities.
I actually took one in Austin, Texas, and it's wild. I mean, you just get in and the vehicle goes on their little route. I mean, I was with my brother and his girlfriend, and she was like, I actually prefer this because, you're getting in them after, going to the bars or something, right? It's a safer ride. But yeah, just very interesting the way that things are shifting in the industry.
Yeah, there's so much dynamics to school transportation. It's less about just driving from point A to point B like Waymo is doing, right? You have to do with loading and unloading, and there's so many other elements that people maybe take for granted. When we live and breathe school transportation, it's second nature, but to the general public, they just see it as a function of A to B. So yeah, I agree with you, Taylor. I think a driverless school bus is probably not realistic. I don't know, as a parent, Ryan's a parent, you're a parent, right? Would you put your son on a school bus with no driver on it and let it just drive itself? I don't know. I feel quite confident in the technology yet that it would be ready for that, but
yeah, it was interesting during one of the general sessions. Eric Neandros, who's the president of TRC, their Clean Transportation Solutions arm of TRC, I should say, that puts on ACT Expo. And he was actually on stage with Matthias Karlblum of International, as well as several other panelists, one from Trayton Group, so the owners of International, and then a couple of AI arms that basically International is working with on this software-defined vehicle. So they actually have a project going on right now, and they were talking about that. And Eric Neandros actually made a comment to Matthias because of the IC bus connection there. And he said, he was talking with somebody on the exhibit floor, and this person told him, "Hey, I know how you can solve the driver shortage for school buses. You have make them autonomous." And he even made a comment there. He said, "No, I don't think that's not what we want to do. We want to always have school bus drivers or somebody on the bus. Maybe one day the school bus will autonomously be driving, but you need to have an adult on the bus to manage the behavior." And we've talked about that. I mean, it's been a few years since we've done some articles on autonomous, because the general consensus was, hey, if this ever goes this route, we're going to need to have still adults, multiple adults maybe, on the school bus managing those students' behavior. So that was good to hear. But certainly from that standpoint, I think that definitely the larger trucking segment is looking hard at autonomous to solve a lot of its driver shortages. But again, when you're talking about driving eggs to market or flat screen TVs or toilet paper or whatever, that's a far cry from getting our future to and from school.
Yeah, I think when we talk a lot too about AI, it's the word's thrown around as a buzzword, right? I mean, we really talk about it a lot in that way, and people say AI, and I'm like, is it really machine learning?
No.
Is it really that? It's more like AI assisted, right? So when we write an article, right, it can write an article for us, but guess what? It's going to come out of context. There's going to be facts wrong. The data is only as good as the data you put in, right? Or the command that you provide. So I think this is a constant kind of thing. And we've talked about using AI technology or AI assisted technology to improve efficiency in our jobs, right? Like, hey, write me a few email headlines that sound good. And I read them and I'm like, yeah, I don't really like those very much, right? Thanks for the suggestion. Other ones you're like, oh, that actually sounded pretty good. Really like that. So it can speed you up, it can speed up your work process, your workflow, maybe writing emails. Or I was in my Outlook and, they have the products in there, Copilot, and it's like, recap what's in my inbox today. So if I'm out at the ACT conference for the last 3 or 4 days, and then I come back and I'm like, yeah, recap my inbox. What do I need to address? Right? It actually does that for me. It's a little hard to digest the information when they spit it back to you, but they're trying to provide you tools as a professional to be more efficient. So I think this in lies, how can school transportation take advantage of AI assisted technologies? How can we see that? How are companies going to evolve? I think many companies that we talk with, think of like somebody like a bus patrol or somebody like that, right? They have all this camera footage that they're processing for cars that are illegal passing. And they're just trying to identify license plates, driver's faces, behaviors, things like that. You have coaching products, right? So the cameras are watching drivers, learning from the behaviors, because there's some program that's set that says, do this, measure for this. But then the program kind of figures out, are these behaviors safe behaviors or not? And where are the thresholds where there needs to be some training or some punitive repercussions for bad behavior? So those are always super interesting because it's the fine line of how does that technology all work symbiotically. And again, when you're talking about truck drivers, Ryan, you brought it up, sleep apnea, there are safety issues, drivers nodding off. There could be drug issues, alcohol abuse issues. I mean, school bus is not unaffected by these things. This stuff could exist in school bus drivers too. So there's a lot of elements when you have humans involved. And as Taylor said, when you remove a human from the car and it's a robot, the robot is working within certain guidelines or parameters to execute the mission that it was given, right? We don't know if those programs could go rogue or things go wrong. What do you do then, right? I mean, I think that's always the trust. It's like a safety. Do you trust that this technology is going to get me home safe?
Absolutely.
Time will tell, right?
And are they going to stop for school buses, right? Is that data put in to these Waymo vehicles that if they're approaching a stopped school bus, are they going to stop? And I don't know the answer to that, but I think that's an interesting aspect.
Highly doubt it.
Well, we do know that, though, that there is the project that Applied Information has been doing with IC Bus and Volvo, and Bluebird was also involved as well. So we know that capability is out there. And again, on a limited scale. So what we're seeing right now is we're still in the infancy of all this stuff. But one of the main things that came across to me during ACT Expo last week was how accelerated it's becoming and how accelerated it's going to be. Matthias Karlbaum, quoted basically Bill Gates several years ago talking about the pace of innovation and how, I paraphrase that, we overestimate to a certain degree what is going to happen, but we underestimate what's actually possible and what actually happens with technology and how fast it happens. And so he came back to that and he discussed that a little bit as well at ACT Expo. But in terms of Again, AI, I sat through another session that talked specifically about adopting AI, and it was more geared again to heavy duty trucking. But the basic premise was that AI is overwhelming, and don't just implement AI for the sake of implementing AI. Look at your business operations, look at a puzzle that you're trying to solve. And then look for an AI tool that helps you solve that puzzle. And then that's where you can see the benefits. So, absolutely, whether you're looking at it from a standpoint of illegal passing, and we see a lot of, again, AI enhanced software that's driving this stuff. Like you said, Tony, it's not true AI yet. AI in terms of artificial intelligence, machine learning, is it's going to actually take action, and it's going to automate things so that it does take out the human decision making, because it's programmed and has learned what to do if this happens, or to identify a behavior like you were talking about, and there's a trend there that they can act then and make sure that the behavior doesn't actually happen because they saw these indicators. But right now we see it in terms of, and we have been seeing it for years now. There's been elements of it in fleet software, in managing fleets, in looking at, fuel efficiency. We see it in route optimization. It's all about right now reducing costs, a lot of it, but we're going to see more and more of it related to safety.
Yeah, I was talking to Tyler Maybe for an article about hop, skip, drives, RouteWise AI, and he kind of said, yeah, there's hesitancy with using AI, right? But it's never going to replace the human. And I think that we need to really hammer that down, is that it's just an aid, it's a help, but it's not going to replace. And so you still need humans to put in the information. You still need people in the back end doing the routing, right? Looking and confirming that everything is running smoothly. The computer, the technology is simply just an unbiased kind of report analysis that's telling you, okay, these are some safety, issues. These are some safety challenges that you need to relook at. So I think that's huge.
So, Tony, what else jumped out at you during your visit to ACT Expo?
Well, we went around a few buses. So I went over to the Daimler Truck North America booth, and Mark Childers, who is there, he's basically talking about their powertrain technology, and he's the sales manager of that. And he gave me a walk around of the Julie 2, right? At SCN Expo East, I was so busy, I kind of walked around it, but I didn't get like a guided tour. So he really gave me a much more in-depth guided tour. We shot a really great video for our social media channels, which we may use on the website as well. But, he just talked a lot about the technology and it being ready, and new drivetrain technology with the e-axle. Talked about the ability to actually flex the size of the chassis to adjust the sizes depending on the needs. And those buses are basically almost ready to start going down the line as they're taking orders for that new drivetrain technology. So that was a product of Meritor developing it, and then Cummins acquiring Meritor through the Accelera program. And so it significantly reduces the weight of the vehicle, and it puts everything into one drive line. So there's some really significant advantages for Thomas Built buses to come out with this technology. And we know they've been field testing it for years. And I'm sure they're already working on the Julie 3. Who knows when that'll be out, right? Not too far behind, I'm sure. And we also hear rumblings of other products, right? I caught up with John Kenning, President and CEO for Student. We had a real in-depth talk about their First Charge product, right? And this is kind of a container built, custom built by one of the STN friends, our former Innovator of the Year, Alex Cook, who's the chief engineer at First Student. It's his brainchild, right? He took everything and got all the equipment packaged into one pretty package, And they just drop it in if you're going to electrify. So you don't have to wait for all the switch gear. You don't have to wait for all the boards. You don't have to wait, for these really long periods. They speed up the time in which you've got infrastructure on site if you're trying to electrify, and really streamline the process. And it's brilliant, absolutely brilliant. But it necessarily, in talking to John, right, it's a portion of their business, but the larger portion is still the transportation, right? It's 90+% of their business is the transportation business. And there's these ancillary businesses that are appearing as a result of innovation and regulation and time. They also have product First Alt, which is their alternative student transportation, which we talked about First Serves, which is some of the education
services.
And they're doing a lot with the special needs side of education, with getting behavioral issues addressed. We had Laura Halley on. She had talked about it at the TSD conference along with Will McDermott. So, these are all businesses of very large, and that the largest operator of school buses in North America. He said 45,000 school buses. That's, they're monster big. And so it's great to sit down with the president and CEO, because in fact, I have never met John in person. So this was the first time to catch him at ACT Expo. And, there really wasn't a ton of school bus content. There was one session, but John did speak, which was great at the show. And I know you had said as well, you ran into a utility CEO. I think, was it Pacific Gas and Electric, PG&E? Was that?
I went to see, so Patty, I didn't run into her, but Patty Poppy is the CEO of PG&E, which is basically the electric provider for, Central and Northern California. And, she talked a lot about the Oakland Unified School District and Zoom project with their full, 74 school buses, electric school buses, the entire fleet, first in the nation to completely electrify its fleet, at least on a larger scale. I think there's been a couple of one or two districts that have, 1 to 3 buses that have gone ahead and flipped all those to electric, but on that larger scale. And then with V2G, I heard a little bit more about V2G. I think that, there's still a lot of proving ground for that. But in talking with John Kenny, he had some impressive numbers of some things that they are doing. And now, granted, for a student, 45 or 46,000 school buses, across North America, they have that purchasing power. And John talked about that. They're able to do things that your average school district can't do. Even some of the largest can't do, just because of their scope and their size. So I think that they're seeing some really big numbers on V2G, just showing where the promise can go. But even on a smaller standpoint, he told me, he said, hey, we're seeing some districts that they work with that are doing V2G pilot projects right now, and they're getting several $1,000s per bus or per fleet. And you look at that over a year, and if you're getting $5,000 even for a fleet a month, $60,000 for the year. That's pretty good. So I think that we are starting to see more. And John talked a little bit about this microgrid project that they're working on with Con Ed in Brooklyn. So right there in the middle of the borough there, they're going to have this microgrid that they're up and running. So there's that element. So I think that, despite some of the funding issues that we've seen with Clean School Bus, and we got an update from Clean School Bus program. That last podcast I did mention that I got a little bit more information, a little bit cryptic from EPA, as the federal government is known to be. But in talking with a lot of the folks at ACT Expo, they confirmed kind of what I was thinking with, EPA saying there's $90 million and counting from basically round 3 that is making its way into the hands of school districts and school bus companies. There's a lot more money to be released. I think the general consensus is as well that no one's really holding their breath for money going forward on that. I know we still are in the window where we should be hearing soon, as in the next week or 2 or days, on the round 4 rebate that the application closed in January. So we're still awaiting that. But I think that, folks are saying, hey, we're not holding our breath. So what else can we do? And we've written in STN that a lot of the state funding is going to be taking over or being more at the forefront of that. We knew that the $5 billion for the Clean School Bus program was going to eventually expire, but we thought it was just going to happen a little bit later, end of 2026, as opposed to now. That seems to be what we're looking at, though. So, going forward, a lot of great conversations at ACT Expo, and we can't forget the other fuels, right? There was a lot of talk about renewables, whether it be renewable natural gas. And I know natural gas for school bus really isn't a thing anymore ever since Bluebird essentially divested of its product in 23 and 24. So there are no more new CNG buses coming out of the lines for school districts. But certainly renewable natural gas for the larger truck unit is huge. That's been a resurgence. We see a lot on renewable diesel as well, and that's still somewhat limited to the Californias and Oregons and Washingtons of the world. There was a report actually that comes out every year to launch ACT Expo, the State of Sustainable Fuels report that TRC puts together based upon a survey of about 200 fleets, and some of them school buses, and renewable diesel, again, and renewable fuels is growing. Taylor, you wrote that article. You looked at that report. You have some more nuggets to share?
Yeah, I think, obviously, like you mentioned, natural gas was kind of like the big highlight of the report in the trucking space. I think what we saw, I was talking with people about at ACT Expo was, that shift. Now it was kind of pushing electric for a while, and we saw that at the show. And now it's kind of the federal government is pushing conventional fuels again, and they highlighted that in the report as well. So kind of looking at other avenues instead of just solely electric, but what other ways, can we fuel these buses? Can we fuel these trucks? And so that was something that the report noted. It also noted the different tax credits that are available. The alternative fuel tax credit expired at the end of 2024. So now there is a new tax credit, the 45Z, that's in the IRA, but we don't really know where that stands. So it kind of mentioned that details were still emerging on that. It's kind of still being sussed out there, but just kind of highlighting some other opportunities for fleet directors and some different avenues for them to go down.
Yeah, I know when I was looking at the report, I caught like a tail end of their talk. I think we also look at other fuel sources, like Ryan brought it up, where you have renewable diesel, right? Where you see the growth of that. We also have propane, right? On the trade show floor, we saw the propane industry, which we know very well. And right next to them was Roush Clean Tech, which plays in the last mile delivery as well as other engines, but they've got the exclusive with Bluebird, and Bluebirds enjoyed the benefits, which they were at the show too, with a truck product as well as a school bus chassis. And they've enjoyed, exclusivity basically on gasoline and propane on their engines. And then we now have obviously Cummins launching their new solution that we've been waiting for. And finally, the Cummins booth is like a city when you go to ACT Expo. And there it is. They've got the tech ready to go, that ISB 7.1. And then it's the gasoline. They decided not to pursue propane. So you have simply a gasoline, electric, and diesel product on the new potential GHG phase 3, which they've already engineered. Regardless if the regulations go through or not, the products have already been engineered to those emission levels. And guess what? The customers get to pay for that engineering and R&D. And when it does come back around and those regs do come through at some form or fashion, the engines hopefully will meet the specifications because there was a lot of that brain power that went into creating this and engineering it. And here we are. So there's all these different fuel types of which CNG has kind of been phased out. So diesel, gas, electric, and propane. So fuel of choice seems to be big. I really didn't hear much in the way of tariff talk. I know it's definitely out there. It's kind of like the elephant in the room no one wants to bring up, but the reality is it's there. We just don't know how it's going to play out. So yeah, a lot of elements, a lot of headwinds there going on, Ryan.
Yeah, that was something interesting to me too. And we talked about it, Tony, heading into ACT Expo. We were wondering what it was going to do to attendance. And it didn't really do much. I think from folks I talked to, I think Vegas last year was bigger. And Vegas is just a bigger convention center. But, it's going to be going back to Vegas next year. And I think I heard the tariff word once. I think Jennifer Rumsey, back to Cummins, the executive chair and CEO of Cummins, mentioned the word, I think, once. But we all know that it's going to be pushed along to customers in some way, shape, or form. And it was interesting during the middle of ACT Expo, President Trump came out and announced he was further relaxing some of the tariffs on the automotive industry and for import automotive as well. And we haven't been able to do a deep dive yet or talk to the people. And I don't even think the people in the know fully yet. Things are just so new and things are being developed as we speak and as we write. But in terms of the cost of the steel and aluminum, that's been relaxed. So that's going to be a big help to automotive. Certainly, we still have the China tariffs at play, but something that we know the industry is working on, and it was a big session and at ACT Expo, was this new joint venture that was actually announced last year, Cummins, PACCAR, and Daimler Trucks America, where years ago you wouldn't see a level of collaboration between three competitors, essentially, or one, drivetrain and engine manufacturer and two big, large truck manufacturers with, there's literally hundreds of years of experience in the room. Well, they announced it last year and it was around zero emissions. They've basically developed this joint venture, created a new company called Amplify Cell Technologies. Having a battery cell manufacturing plant outside of Memphis, Tennessee, that's going to provide those three companies with the battery packs or the cells that go into the battery packs that Cummins is going to be making and then giving to Daimler and PACCAR. So we're going to see how that really will drive things. And this was, again, an announcement made before the Trump tariffs were announced and before the election even. So certainly will we see more of that type of collaboration here domestically in the U.S. And again, there is still some of that IP, if you will, coming from China. But I think China has a 10% stake in that venture. So there's still a lot being figured out. But one of the things that Jennifer Rumsey said that I actually tweeted that really stood out to me was, let's not let perfect get in the way of good. Meaning the perfect will be zero emissions and that promise, but we're just not there yet. We can't let that progress get in the way of the progress that's already been made and is being made on all these other fuels. Again, it's going to take a village, and that's been as I mentioned earlier, a conversation switch over the last couple of years at ACT Expo. But in talking to other people, I think it really resonated this year. Some folks were saying, this year more than any, it was always, electric, zero emissions, fuel cell. And now it's, hey, we need to have all types of fuels readily available.
Yeah, another person we caught up on the trade show floor, I think you and Taylor ran into him, Craig Beaver, STN Director of the Year. You guys were on an elevator together. You didn't even know, and you saw each other like, hey, Craig, look at that. Small world.
I was, Paco Lagunas from Cummins and I were bantering about like something somebody dropped or something. And all of a sudden I look up and see this big, tall guy next to me. I'm like, oh, I think Taylor actually noticed him before I did.
Can't miss his head, it just stands out.
The former offensive lineman. So yeah, our former transportation director of the year for 2024, I guess still our reigning transportation director of the year until the next one is announced this fall. But it was interesting.
Yeah, but speaking of fuels,
well, yeah, I mean he's got them all, and kind of the new Tim Shannon, if you will. Tim Shannon, for those in the nation who know him, he's actually the business development manager now for Highland Electric. Was the director of transportation for Twin Rivers Unified School District in Sacramento, California, and actually we gave him an award around the Green Bus Summit several years ago for his kind of early adoption of electric, but he just wanted to get his hands on everything he could. And again, hearkening back to another former great in the industry, Ralph Knight from Napa Valley Unified, who just wanted to just get involved with everything he could and have all the different fuels and get electric. And Craig's done that same thing and has really taken it to the next level with his data. And open source, really, where he's comparing and contrasting. He wants all the different fuels, electric, all the different manufacturers, so you can really benchmark everything. So it's really become a great resource to the industry. And he has this stuff on the transportation website of his district, Beaverton School District, out there right next to Portland, Oregon. So you can go on his website and see this stuff. So we've written a bit about it, and we're looking to always, tap his brain. But it was interesting, Taylor. He actually gave you a little bit of a scoop.
I randomly ran into Craig Beaver, and he gave me some scoop. He said that he was purchasing more electric vehicles, right? So we were over in the Ride booth interviewing them over there because they're, again, another school bus manufacturer with Ride, and talking to their folks. And there was Craig just hanging out in their booth, having a chat, and gave him a big hug, said hello. And he said, "Hey, Tony, I'm buying like 10 more Ride school buses." I know he took delivery of a bunch and was very excited about it. And obviously, in light of Lion's unfortunate demise here, that seems to be, a scratch on the board. So looking for other, purveyors that are going to have the wherewithal to stick around and support. And, he again was in this place where he's like, all right, what are we going to do now that those buses are there and we have them? How are we going to support them with maintenance? How are we going to support them with parts? What am I going to do? So I think a lot of customers like Craig are in the same boat where they're like, what am I going to do with these buses that I got through these programs long term? Do they lose value, right? I think in the school bus industry, we always talk about like the amortization of the vehicle's value over time. Well, what happens when a manufacturer goes out of business? Are those buses intrinsically just going to be worth less because there's no warranty now, no service and support? That just leaves a huge hole in the market. So we talked a little bit about both of these things. So partnering with a new guy like Ride, who obviously has got a lot of great technology, has a long history of EV technology. So really interesting conversation with Craig.
Well, for a fee for student, we have one of our articles writes about providing a warranty for the line school bus because they have so many of their own, and they had to figure this stuff out because of even when Lion was actively, manufacturing, there were some issues I know with getting support. So, I think we're seeing a lot of service related business. I think to your point, you touched on it earlier, Tony, where there's a company like First Student is expanding, and yes, their bread and butter is transporting students on a yellow school bus, but now they're transporting students in other vehicles, and they're providing all these other services, maintenance and warranties, and just there's so much going on, especially when you look at it from a zero emission standpoint that is new. That folks don't necessarily think about. So it's just, lending itself to all these new business models.
Yeah, I mean, and with the Lion situation, I know a lot of directors are kind of in that wait and see because of these purchase orders. A lot still have outstanding purchase orders for buses through Lion, and so they don't know what's going to happen with that. And if they're stuck in these purchase orders, how they can get out of them so that they can purchase buses through a different manufacturer. So I know I've talked to a couple people who are kind of stuck right now and they don't really know what direction to go in, and they're working with their lawyers to kind of see how to bridge this, because Ryan, you could probably talk on it more, but we just posted an article that basically says Lion's going to be, sold for parts, right?
Well, and it was already going that way. I mean, there's the ongoing auction that Deloitte has been managing through that CCA, the Canadian restructuring, or asset liquidation under, bankruptcy court. And there was essentially, as we were at ACT Expo, there some conversation obviously around Lion, because at that time there was a plan, last ditch plan that was presented to the Quebec provincial government to get some additional investment. And keep in mind, Quebec has already invested like $150 million into the company, and Ottawa has, ponied up some cash, and the Canadian federal government, and of course, what's really precluded all this for Lion is they were in debt; they couldn't repay creditors. So this last ditch effort was rejected by the Quebec provincial government last week. So really, it does look like that at this point they're going to be sold off for scraps. I did reach out to Mark Bedard, the president and CEO founder of Lion, and he had no comment. But he did respond to me, and so it's basically looking at this point that we'll have to see if anybody does, or multiple companies start purchasing aspects of Lion. This last ditch plan was essentially to keep the Saint Jerome, Quebec manufacturing plant alive. Only school buses. There's about 2,000 Lion Electric school buses out there at districts and bus companies across North America. There's maybe about another 200 of their big trucks, but this plan was going to completely shelve the trucks. It was going to keep school buses, no school buses in the U.S., but again, that was rejected. So going forward, we'll have to see exactly, if anybody emerges with any of that IP. Part of this news also reported by La Presse, which is a Montreal-based online magazine, and then Bloomberg News and others now have been reporting on it, said that there was a U.S. investment firm, an unnamed U.S. investment firm, that was also trying to purchase all of Lion, but it looks like that's not happening. I don't know. We'll see. More developments, I'm sure. So we'll see how that plays out over the next coming days and weeks.
Yeah, this is a great time at ACT Expo. We really appreciate them for having us as a media partner. There's so much coverage from Ryan and Taylor and the team. We've got videos, photo galleries, tons of stories recapping, guys. So go to stnonline.com, go to our event news area, latest news as well, and get all the latest and greatest as well. Don't forget about STN Expo this summer. We're out in Reno, Nevada, Lake Tahoe. It's fun, it's sun, it's heat. We got our early bird registration to save $100 off. We've got a great agenda, some great keynote speakers, John Petz, magical moments, rules of amazement. We've got a lot of really great topics in there around energy, operations, maintenance, special needs, technology. We got our Bus Tech Summit, our Green Bus Summit, Transportation Director Summit. There's just a mountain of things for you guys to do out there at the conference. So take full advantage this summer on everything we're doing over here at STN to bring you the latest and greatest. If you don't like the classes, just blame Ryan. He's the one that's making them all. Just telling you. No, I'm kidding. But go just email Ryan at stnonline.com. If you got any suggestions, any recommendations, you want to speak? Hey, we love speakers. We We love our transportation people. We love you guys out there. So please share ideas, share about projects that you're doing, anything that's innovative with your staff. Taylor would love to hear about it for stories and things like that. So we always invite you guys to contribute, be part of our community and all the things that we're creating for you. Also, don't forget, respond to our surveys. Taylor loves sending surveys, and she needs your responses. So thank you for that. She's sending hearts out there to everyone in the nation for supporting our surveys. So guys, we appreciate you and want to extend a special thanks again to Taylor and Ryan for coming on, working so hard this week at the ACT Expo, putting it down. Also, thanks to the rest of the STN team in the background that's making things happen always for us. You guys are great. We're doing big things, and we love the support that the nation provides. Also, thanks to our sponsor, TransFinder. They're always here with us, ride or die. Every week, TransFinder is with us on the podcast. They're the leader in school bus routing software, so please make sure you tell them you heard about them on the STN podcast. Spread the good word, nation. We got you covered, stnonline.com, for all the latest news and analysis on the school transportation industry. Nation, we love you. We'll see you next week.